Hello, Internet. Welcome to a very special episode of the Get Geek podcast. As many of you know, the actor Chadwick Boseman passed away this week at the age of 43 of colon cancer. So we're going to talk a little bit about him and try to honor him in this podcast as best as we can as a staple of geek culture, a fine young actor with a lot of potential. So as I said this week, we're just going to talk about that a little bit. And we do have a special guest. I'm Jose.
This is Gabe.
This is Danny. Am I the special guest?
Yeah, you're the special guest.
You are the special guest.
Sure. All right, cool. So yeah, I'm Danny.
I mean, there's not that much special about you, but you know,
this is not the other podcast. You cannot talk to me like that. Here. Sorry.
Eli?
What other?
You say? Oh, and this is Walt.
All right. So just before we get started, I guess we'll do a couple of things as usual. Please forgive any sound issues that we're having on the podcast. We are recording remotely to be as safe as possible. So if you have any issues that you hear with sound artifacts or any other issues, we're too low, we're too loud, whatever it is, let us know. Give us some feedback. We would appreciate it. And again, please thank you for bearing with us. As well, the best way to support the podcast, of course, is to like, rate, share, and subscribe. You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and iTunes, where all your favorite podcasts are sold. Give us any feedback you have on the podcast. Then, real quick, guys, what other podcast were Gabe and Danny talking about? I guess plug that real quick because you guys.
We run another podcast called The Grappling Review.
Yeah.
Most of you guys may already know, I own a jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai school called The Dojo, which currently is shut down. But I focus mainly on jiu-jitsu, and Danny is my student. So when we're on
Gabe
that
owns
podcast,
me.
I own him, and he does whatever I say, like go get me cookies and stuff in the city. But
On the other podcast, no, not on this one.
I could talk to him however I want.
It's called The Grappling Review. You guys should go check it out. It's pretty cool. We have interviews now. We're pretty solid
up
guys.
there. We're pretty good interviewers.
You guys are legit.
Apparently, new quote right there. We are pretty good interviewers.
Yeah.
That's a plug right there. That's a heck of a plug. We are pretty good interviewers. Check out our podcast. Go ahead.
We're not here for the grappling review. We're here for something that I think is really important and dear to us, and it's the life and legacy that Chadwick Boseman has left behind. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do we start? I mean, you know,
how do you start that?
Shock. Like what was your what I would like to know is what each of you were doing the moment that you found out, and who and how you heard of it.
Oh man, what was I doing? I was with a friend of mine, actually. We were hanging out. We were walking around. I was with the friend that I saw Black Panther with, one of my closest friends, who happens to be black as well. So, you know, we kind of talked about the impact it had on both of us. And, you know, the movie had a huge impact on him. Just to give you an idea, he's a big movie buff. He loves Marvel movies. He's not one to go see a movie in the theater twice. You know the type. But he saw this movie twice. We almost saw it 3 times. So like that night, we were hanging out. Obviously, it was pretty late, I think, when we all found out. And, you know, we talked about it a little bit. Like, it was just complete and utter shock. I think we were talking about fantasy baseball or something, a fantasy baseball league we're both in. And it just got interrupted. And real quick, I looked at my phone, and he was reading some stuff about his team, and he paused, and I paused. We both got the notification, I guess, at the same time. And obviously the conversation just, you know, went about Chadwick Boseman from there. What about you guys? What was happening with you when you found out the news?
I'm trying to think now, actually.
Yeah,
I was in shock. And I know that, like, the moment that I found out, I was just, like, calling everybody. Like, you know, I usually don't, you know, like, obviously when Kobe Bryant died, I was in shock and everything. But I wasn't as in shock as I was this past Friday, you know. Oh man, what was I doing? I forgot what I was doing.
It was
I think I was playing
later.
like Call of Duty actually, and then I like in the lobby I was waiting. I just went to check Instagram or something, and I saw you know, rest in peace Chadwick Boseman by accident. Like I just scrolled real quick and I saw his, you know, like picture. I thought it was just another picture of him, you know, celebrity photo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I just read, as I scrolled up, I just read R.I.P. and I was like, wait, what? And I immediately went to Google, put in his name just to see the reports, and all of a sudden I saw everywhere Variety and the whole nine read about like the statement that was put out, and yeah, just immediately I honestly felt like, you know, that we lost a real king, you know, I don't know. It's just that's like kind of like the shockwave that I feel like has
a growing legend.
happened. So yeah. What about you guys?
I was sipping on some Henny and sitting with two friends, and then literally one of my friends was just like, I hate to break the news to you, but Chadwick Boseman passed away. And I thought they were just fucking with me. And I was like, come on, like why would you play like that? That's like it's such a very specific name to throw out there that it was like, oh, like Black Panther, like Jackie Robinson, like nah. And then that's when, you know, pull the phone out, Instagram, CNN, all these other things start posting and showing, and you're just like, okay. And you're right. It's like it was this weird shock, but like there was a lot of disbelief in it also.
Yeah.
Because then you kind of go back and you're like, okay, wait, no, maybe I misread that. Maybe they've got it wrong. Because, you know, and then you read specifically colon cancer and you're like, but did we know he had that? Like, did anyone know he had that? So it's like, is this real? Is it fake? Like, yeah, it was pretty sad.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? What about the boys? Yeah, Eli. What were you doing?
We were just...
They were probably on DBZ.
Were you asleep?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
You were talking about how corny something was, Eli?
At least...
Talking about how corny it is that Fortnite is in the MCU? Or in Marvel canon now? Sorry, go ahead.
We were kind of just chilling. Like, I have my own seat over in the couch area, so I was there. You probably right. I was probably looking at Legends or Dokkan or something. And then, you know, Walt comes over and he's like, you know, Chadwick Boseman died. I'm like, sorry, what? How? Like, at first I thought exactly like what Danny said. Is this like some kind of joke? The dude's like in his 40s. I was like, wow. It was crazy to say the least. And I'm sorry if that sounds generic, but that's the only way I can describe it. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Weren't we doing Bill and Ted also?
We just finished watching it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We were just talking about, so just so you guys know, as we do our research and try our best to prepare for our podcast and stuff. And we were all kind of like talking about the next episode is supposed to be our review and our impressions on Bill and Ted 3, which just came out this weekend. But, you know, we're going to push that, you know, because this is such an important thing to talk about and discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is bigger than just about anything. And you can see it in the outpouring from everyone.
Yeah.
From like the former president, Barack Obama, like down to like every person, you know, pretty much. Every actor, post. Every celebrity, Chuck Schumer, like cursing on Facebook.
Yeah.
Saying F 2020.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, that's where I saw
athlete tributes. The athlete tributes always get me.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, with the Wakanda Forever, like kind of crossing their arms and doing that on the court and doing all that. Like that's big, man. You know what I mean? Like so, it was huge to everyone. It was a huge impact.
Right. So that's something that like we should talk about, right? Because it's one thing to note, you know, and in the statement, it's important to note that Chadwick Boseman believed that the mantle of Black Panther was the honor of his life. You know, but it's not the only thing that he did. He did, you know, Jackie Robinson, of course, we mentioned. He did Thurgood Marshall. Mm-hmm. He did, I'm blanking here.
It was James Brown.
We were just
James
watching.
Brown and
Up.
stuff. So he did a lot. He did a lot of very iconic representation of black leaders and very important black roles and stuff. But this is the thing that I feel like, at least from my perspective, my point of view, that he is being, known for. It's Black Panther, and it's not so much because he played a superhero or that he played this character that is a king, but because he really did kind of become like royalty, in a way. The way that he carried himself, the way that he operated, the way that he interacted with people and his worldviews is what I feel like he embodied as far as like that royal view, which is why I feel like we really did lose a king, not just, in from characterization and stuff, but, so
I also think I read somewhere that he did like 7 movies in the time period that he was sick, which is like, and he did like, that's crazy.
And then that's the other thing too.
4
like,
years. Mm-hmm.
And you got to understand, probably when he was filming Black Panther, he probably knew at the time that's around the time that he was diagnosed with this. So you got to look at it this way. He's doing Black Panther. Black Panther is a demanding role because a lot of the things he did, those were stunts that he did, and he already weakened from it, and then going forward, all the other things that he's done, it's just amazing that he was still able to do all of that stuff, undergoing all the treatment and all the surgeries that he's had to undergo during that time.
No, and no one knows exactly when he was diagnosed specifically, but it was around 2016. So that was when he was first coming to prominence in Civil War as Black Panther. And then in 2017, that's when he was filming it. So that's a year after he found out. In 2018, the movie comes out. And all this time between treatments and all that, he's filming that and obviously a lot of other things. And again, physically demanding roles, because in 21 Bridges, there's a little bit of an action tilt to it, it looks like. And in The Five Bloods, which came out recently on Netflix, he also is like a soldier. So he does a lot of very physical work. And again, he does a lot of great things about representation of Black characters and the Black experience in different stories. So he's doing all of this. Well, I mean, what do you guys think? What was his thought process? What was his reasoning? Like the impact, maybe?
So, yeah. So, one thing that was like kind of interesting, and I felt like I kind of noted this personally. I didn't really speak it out loud, but in hindsight, it kind of makes sense. In Avengers Endgame and stuff, he didn't have like a super prominent role. And even in the parts that he did show up, he looked a little bit, thinner. He didn't look, as full as he did in the original Black Panther. And now thinking back on it, like clearly he was going through, because they said that he went through multiple surgeries and he went through chemotherapy. And I even felt like in the scenes that he was walking around, he looked like he was walking around, I don't want to say unhealthy, but he just looked different. And I remember distinctly kind of noting that. And obviously I didn't think that he was sick, but it's just something that like I wondered in the back of my mind. And then you just saw The Five Bloods, and you mentioned that, there's some sort of like, almost like a farewell or whatever. Did you notice anything like that when you saw that?
So I guess there's,
without spoilers, of course,
that.
Guys, so.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil the Five Bloods for anyone. It's the new Spike Lee film that came out on Netflix, and starring Clark Peters and good Lord, I'm blanking on some of the cast. Delroy Lindo, and of course Chadwick Boseman was one of the main characters in this movie. And there's one thing I want to note very quickly before that, and I don't know if you guys had ever seen this, but there are a couple of photos that have materialized over the last couple of years of him looking really thin, like sickly thin, and that I saw, I think earlier this year, maybe late last year, and I was, as many other people were, kind of concerned with how thin he looked, but you kind of write it off sometimes a little bit, and like, okay, maybe this is for a role, or he's losing weight. Maybe it's just he's looked like that because he's going to play a character that's whatever, thinner for some reason. And then I saw The Five Bloods, and he looked thinner in that movie. But it made sense to me in that movie because obviously the storyline of this movie, again, without spoiling it, is it's a group of black men many years after serving in the Vietnam War. It's a group of 5 of them. They're the 5 Bloods, obviously the title of the movie. And what happens essentially is they come together after many years, and it's implied very early on. It's not even implied. It's explicit that Chadwick Boseman passed away. His character passed away. They don't say exactly when, but you can figure that out obviously from them being pretty explicit at the beginning of the movie about honoring him and all of that. And they go back to Vietnam in order to like find a treasure that they had left there. So it's a slightly odd movie in the plotting. And how they get all these characters together. But what they do in the movie is they have flashback scenes where all of the older characters, like I said, Clark Peters, Delroy Lindo, are interacting with a young Chadwick Boseman in flashbacks of the Vietnam War. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it made sense to me that he would be thin there because if you're in a war, you're not always going to be eating all that great. Like it makes perfect sense. So, but long story short, and again, without spoiling it, in that movie, since the movie was partially a tribute to his character, right? That's the whole point of this movie. It's almost like the way he plays it. And again, this is just my opinion. I don't know. Maybe Spike Lee had an idea because Chadwick Boseman really had an idea. This might be the last movie he's ever going to film. So maybe Spike Lee and him came up with something saying like, let's play this the way that it is in real life. Like maybe you're memorializing yourself in a sense.
Maybe.
And there's a way that he plays it. And I'll stop there because I don't want to spoil it for anyone or kind of plant that idea in everyone's head if that's not necessarily what they were trying to achieve. But there definitely is something that I saw there. I don't know if anybody else has seen the movie or if anybody else would agree. Or,
I mean, I don't know because like he didn't make anyone privy, including right. the director of Black Panther. He didn't, he was going through everything during Black Panther and afterwards, and filming for Endgame, and no one knew. I mean, as far as the director straight up said that like he's super private and he wasn't privy to his personal struggles and stuff. I don't know if anybody at Marvel was privy to it at all. So I don't know if Spike Lee knew.
I think that's the reason why. I think that may be the reason why it feels like such a gut punch because at least with some other actors or celebrities, you kind of have an inkling, and this just came out of left field. Like nobody knew.
Again, like from the reaction, it was again, like you said, he died of what? Colon? Like that's kind of things that you could get announced almost immediately. Like, I mean, credit to him for keeping his life private.
But the other thing too is like. That also goes to show that like in the moment where like you're the end is near and that it's a possibility that you can pass anytime. That's from when we watch movies of end of life type of situations and scenarios and stuff, or you hear these stories from others. When you know that the end is near, you tend to do a couple things, right? Like you start like thinking about how you're going to be remembered. You start thinking about the others around you, and it's very clear that he didn't want people to suffer through him, and he also wanted to make sure that he had a lasting legacy. The way that he interacted with like other people in the filmmaking community and stuff, being a positive role model for them, texting them messages of inspiration, like Josh Gad, just sending him a message of inspiration for the day on a rainy day, and
Josh Gad was really broken up.
Yeah, it's just it goes to show that like the moment that he realized that like it's possibly the end of his time, instead of letting everyone know and then kind of keeping to himself or making the rest of his days kind of about that, he wanted to make sure that he had like purpose. And I think that that's what makes it like even thinking about it right now, that just makes it even harder to accept, because that's the heroic thing.
He just got married.
That was recent.
He literally just got married. Wow. Like he was with his girlfriend since 2015. They got engaged in October. Wow. And supposedly they said that they got married in secret. So he knew that his time was short. You know, if you look back and look at the tea leaves, you see all the little hints, but of course nobody's thinking that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of speaks to how well he was cast, not only as, you know, Thurgood Marshall, and other, you know, iconic Black characters, and then you come to Black Panther, and Black Panther was definitely, at least by most accounts, you know, Ryan Coogler and everyone else that worked with him, Lupita Nyong'o and Michael B. Jordan, they said that Black Panther was really a very, very close extension of him, and that's one of the things that's special about the MCU, to be certain. But that's what's amazing about him as an actor, as a person, is that in the movie you see like there's this great poise, you know, to him. There is this kind of royal quality, but it's not a cockiness.
No,
it's a very kind confidence, and you hear that from him, from everybody that's interacted with him, that he was he was an interested person. He was very in the moment with everybody that he interacted with, whether it was a little kid in a hospital that he was visiting, knowing that he's going through in many cases some form of cancer like they are when he's going to visit them. With every actor that he interacted with, every fan, you know, there's that Jimmy Fallon video that's been going around recently of him interacting with some people that don't know that he's going to pop out, you know, like that they're talking about what Black Panther meant to them, and then he pops out and like he seems like such an affable.
There's
like,
another video that's going around that's like killing me. Did you guys see the Access Hollywood red carpet video?
Yeah, the one where he talks about how he's dead.
Yeah, the one that he keeps repeating that I'm dead. Like they asked him about his future with Marvel, and he's saying, I can't talk about it. I'm dead. And he just keeps saying, at that moment he knew what he was going through.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think so too.
That's hard. I haven't seen it, but that sounds heartbreaking.
There's also that other video.
Well, they're talking about
also that other video
his character, right, in Endgame, when he's doing that. But it's just the way that he repeated like four times. You know,
yeah. Oh man,
yeah. He repeats it so often. Well, you were saying something. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's also that video, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but when Black Panther came out, you know, he was speaking about these two kids, which, you know, you watch that video now and it just breaks your heart, because he's talking about two kids that have terminal cancer.
They just wanted to, you know, I remember that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and they were holding on to watch that thing, and he actually broke down during that video. And it's just like it's like one of these things where it's like, you know, he's going through it. He knows their pain, and you know, he understands that. And again, like all this stuff that you go back to and see, it's like, oh my gosh, all this stuff that he was going through, and just that quiet dignity. I mean, you know, that's something that I'll always remember Chadwick Boseman for. The dignity that he shows in all of his roles. Like we were just watching 42 right before this podcast, you know.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. Movie. It is. There were times where I was getting all welled up, you know, teary-eyed and whatnot, because just to see that struggle. But again, you know, that role, and again with James Brown, and again with Thurgood Marshall, those were all roles that required a certain amount of. You couldn't fake the funk on that when it comes to dignity, and he did it so effortlessly. And you know, Black Panther is going to be the role that he's always remembered by. But it's almost as if those three roles were preparing him for that role, you know, because the way he portrayed T'Challa was so effortless, you know. It was just something where it didn't even look like he was acting. It was just a natural extension of himself.
That was him.
Yeah, it was.
You know? That's what Ryan Coogler talked about. Yeah. You know, that every interaction was very genuine. That's why they cast Shuri. He talks about it on his little quick. He did a memoriam, wrote a little memoriam on Twitter, and he talks about how, like, with Shuri, the reason that they cast her was because he was so poised and so kingly and so good at it, but he's still kind of like this you know, sweet guy, and Shuri made him laugh, like made him break, and kind of brought out that side of him. So she helped us see it in the film, like just who he was as a person and how he brought it to the role.
It's very interesting that you know, in Black Panther, which essentially is the movie that kind of, figuratively crowned him as a king, that there's also a king making ceremony in the film. So it's almost like so official, like he and that king making ceremony that was portrayed, it shows that he is willing to fight, willing to go through the struggle, even though he's, at a disadvantage when he gets the Black Panther power taken away from him and stuff, but he's still willing to fight. And even in a fight still, maintain that kingly attitude and showing mercy and everything is just, I don't know, I don't think anyone could have filled that role. Like you had to be, speaking to what you're saying, Walt, you had to have that dignity already to play this role.
It was effortless for him. He didn't have to work at it. It was just something that came naturally. And you know what's the crazy thing? He never wanted to be an actor in the first place.
He wanted to be a director.
Because he wanted to be a director. He went to school for directing. And the only reason that he went into acting was because, and this is like a Jedi thing and whatnot, but he needed to know all of the aspects of filmmaking in order for him to be a great director. And not only that, but he was a playwright also.
That I didn't know. Wow.
He wrote a play. He went to high school and he was a basketball player, but drama was still his first love. But he actually wrote a play in high school that they actually did because it was commemorating. And again, this speaks to the type of person that he was. The play was based off of one of his teammates that passed away while they were in school, and he wrote a play on that. And to top it all off, that's not the only play, because he's done other plays. There's another play that he did where he actually got awards for it. So there's a lot of things that people don't know about. He used to teach.
Nope.
That I had. Was aware of. I don't know what he taught, but.
Yeah,
it was very brief, though.
Everybody knows the story about him going to Howard and Felicia Rashad taking him under his wing and mentoring him. And, Felicia was actually the one that hooked him up with Denzel Washington, who then paid for his tuition to go to Oxford, to study. But, he did a lot of things outside of just acting. He's a staunch supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement, when he was doing the Marvel movies, they started a campaign called the Universe Unites campaign, which was supposed to raise awareness, and funds for children's charities. And he also taught, and this was around the time where he actually considered quitting right before he got the 42 part.
Okay.
But, he went to, he was in like one of these, I'll tell you exactly what it is. He mentored a whole bunch of kids, in an inner city group where it was about drama, but he was there teaching. And even once he became big, he still was hugely involved in that. That shows you the type of person that he was.
These are all kind of things that he ends up doing in some form or fashion. In Black Panther as well, the charities that he donates to by the end of the movie. I mean, because there is a lot of feedback on that movie came from him. Like, he worked really intimately with Ryan Coogler. It was his idea to use the I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this correctly, the Xhosa language, the African language in the film. To kind of free it from the influence of colonized accents, European accents, to make it show that Wakanda was very independent, was never conquered. So there were a lot of ideas that he put in that movie that were part of his personality that you kind of described, where he was very, very involved in his community. He was very, very involved in uplifting other people and reaching out to other people and bringing people together in order to create, well, part of his legacy and a better future for those people, which was something that was really interesting about what he brought to every role and what he was like as a person. I just want to say, like, when I was watching Black Panther yesterday, just to kind of piggyback off that thought of how he played the character as an extension of himself. What I was noting, and what I had noted before, is that one of my favorite scenes in that movie is when he fights M'Baku early on. I think we talked about that a moment ago, like his kingly coronation and all that. That's one of the best, I think, fight scenes in the entire MCU and in all of comics, in all of comic book movies, at telling a story in the fight, right? Because in that fight, from start to finish, you see everything about him that makes him special. Again, not just as Black Panther, but as a person. You see his pride, you see his strength, you see his resolve, you see his kindness and his mercy. You see all of that in that scene. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is very interesting also, because that adds to, what we can talk about, which was his impact, not just on us, but on everyone as a whole, which is kind of where we've been moving towards with this conversation. But I don't know if you guys noted any of that in any of his other roles or anything like that, where you kind of saw that going through.
Actually, so 42 was my first exposure to him as an actor. I hadn't really seen him in anything else before that. But I remember I've been a very big fan of Jackie Robinson for a long time. Like, I live right by the Jackie Robinson Parkway. Like, Jackie Robinson's grave is like a couple feet away from where my great grandmother was buried. So I used like his yearbook. I used a quote of his as my yearbook quote in high school. Like, I did like papers on him. Like, so to see that movie,
all right,
like, and how he portrayed it, like, it was. I thought he did a great job at it. And, there's the one scene that in particular sticks out to me. I don't know if has anyone else seen the movie? If you haven't, if you haven't, check it out. He gives a great performance in that also, but it's that scene towards the end where he just has that breakdown in that hallway, like going to the dugout.
Oh,
my God. Like, to this day, that was like, I had tears in it, because it's just like he put all his emotions in that. It's just
to this day.
Wow. Mm-hmm. It was like, so when I saw he was casted as Black Panther, it was like, all right, they got a great actor for this, because he blew me away in that movie, honestly. And I thought he did a great job of portraying a struggle. And, someone touched on it earlier. It's true. Like, all these roles kind of like built him up to be ready to play this king who has experienced this trouble and all these other things. And, it's great.
And it just honestly feels like, each movie is kind of like reflecting his personality and giving us a sense of who he really is, not just the character. I mean, yeah, the character, it helps us we're basically watching the movie and we have information about the character, but one of the main things that you really see from these movies like Black Panther is just his personality. It's not really
I mean, he embodies the character. He's not acting as those characters. He's embodying them, and then he's lending he's lending his own experiences come out in those roles.
You could say he's inhabited by those characters in a sense.
Right.
Yeah, because if you look at some of the roles, he doesn't really look like some of the characters that he's playing.
Right.
But it's the personality and his interpretation of the character that's so powerful. You don't, and that just proves to you don't have to look like the character in order to be the character. And that's what he does so well. He just dives and puts everything into all these roles.
It
makes you it makes you sad to see, or it makes you sad to think what other roles he would have inhabited in the future of his career, other iconic, people from Black history or something along those lines.
Well,
it's kind of sad.
That's something I kind of wanted to touch on because one thing that I thought that kind of struck me, like today, again, scrolling through Instagram, we see the outpouring of love and support, but we also I saw a picture of clearly, a boy that is a super fan of Black Panther, he's sitting there on the floor with Black Panther toys and DVD and looks like an art book and stuff, comic books, and he's just sobbing and crying at the news that he just found out that, Chadwick Boseman died. And one thing that I think is important is the fact that, like, in Black Panther, this is a hero right now that's current right now for the kids that kids can relate to, right? Like all these other heroes from the past, none of the kids today grew up with them. They didn't grow up with, Thurgood Marshall and Jackie Robinson and whatnot, So there's not many current, heroes out there like in media that kids today can relate, Black children that can look up to and say, yeah, when I grow up, I want to be like him, and I think that, like, that's another, big loss, and I think in a way too, though, the fact that he's able to represent that and be that hero for all those kids, that character is now also going to be the gateway for the young Black community into these past heroes through his representation as well. So that's another thing that I think that sucks is, man.
Right, because even if you look at, he wasn't the first, let's say, Black superhero that we saw on film, but he was kind of the first of a type, because if you think about it, what have we seen before? We saw Blade. He's an anti-hero. He's not a superhero. He's not as moral as the character of Black Panther is mostly portrayed as in the comics and elsewhere. And Spawn, he's like a guy from hell. Like, again, this is what you don't even see that he's Black for most of the movie. These are anti-heroes.
Don't forget Luke Cage.
Luke Cage in a TV show, of course. It's not that he's the first by any stretch of the imagination, but it also, in terms of impact, let's also remember that he did show, and the big thing about this movie was that it made so much money, and it showed everyone that this weird myth in Hollywood that movies that had Black casts and Black crews for some reason couldn't make money. It was always this ridiculous myth in Hollywood. So that's part of the impact. And then you watch how people saw it around the world in Africa, how people kind of were dancing and celebrating at screenings of this film.
Representation is such a big deal. Like it's
huge. Yeah. And it was just the way that it was so positive, the way that it made so much money and was so successful in the most successful franchise in the world, being the MCU. And then, to touch upon how we also were looking forward again to seeing him in terms of like the geek impact, to talk about that for a moment, like who wasn't looking forward to seeing him like maybe be a leader of the Avengers in future movies, or him fighting Namor, or him becoming a part of the Illuminati. Like all this stuff that's going on in the comics, like him being part. Can you imagine how awesome it would have been for his role? Let's say they brought the Illuminati from Marvel Comics into this, where he has to like kind of be a little shady, which, of course the character is not perfect in the comics, but that would have added such a much more interesting layer. And to see Chadwick Boseman do that, we're not going to get to see that, and there is his sister Shuri in the comics, Letitia Wright, is Black Panther, but then that transition, however they decide to do it now, is going to be so much different. And Ryan Coogler was talking about the lines that he was writing for Black Panther 2 that Chadwick Boseman is never going to get to say.
So that's the next question.
He didn't know.
Is right? where does the franchise go from here? We've been chatting about this like all night last night after everything, but where do you guys think the MCU is going to take Black Panther? Do they recast him and we still have T'Challa alive? Do they do 3D?
No.
Do they do 3D modeling?
That is,
I'm with it. No, absolutely not. I would not want to see a 3D model.
No, wait, but but I'm saying like you know how they brought like with the whole whatchamacallit? I forgot what was the term now.
Somebody that was
like the face swapping and all that, you know what I mean?
Oh, with Fast and Furious.
Oh, like with
No.
Or Tarkin from Star Wars.
Deepfakes.
Yeah, deepfakes. I don't. You know, like, do you think that they'll do like a deep fake of Chadwick Boseman's face and tell a story?
No.
They might do it briefly for a transition, and that's all that I would accept.
Yeah.
You know, he's done 4 movies in the MCU. There is footage probably that we've never seen.
That's true too.
Maybe they can repurpose.
Mm-hmm. But here's the question that I have. Here's the question that I have, right? Because they did it with Leia, but it didn't really work out that well with Leia because they used the extra footage that they had, but because the actual footage wasn't meant for that story or those lines, it didn't really. You could tell that it was just kind of spliced in. You know what I mean? That's what I'm afraid of happening, that like they'll kind of do like a disservice to him by splicing him in and the story not feeling very like disjointed.
We're going to get another game of
like
death.
The Sopranos.
The only thing I'll say about the Leia stuff is that Leia wasn't truly the star of the movie, so she would have had filmed less scenes as opposed to, you know, Chadwick Boseman. He had an entire movie that was just dedicated to him. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of scenes that hit the cutting floor that maybe you can repurpose.
Hopefully, they were.
I think that's the one little difference.
They were supposed to focus on Leia in the last movie, though. So that, well, I mean, we saw how that worked out.
Yeah,
they
never got around to it because they didn't have enough footage.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, she was supposed to be the star of the film, essentially, or a star, one of the top billing roles and stuff, and essentially T'Challa would be a top billed role. Yeah, you know, I don't know, man.
They would have to have enough to transition him. I guess.
No one here would be good with a recast.
I don't.
No.
Who
would you recast?
Way.
Who do you think?
I'm not saying I know who could recast. I'm just saying like. A new
T'Challa. I say a new Black Panther altogether, completely new character, new name, new everything. Let King T'Challa, let Boswick be.
He is
Boseman
he is Black Panther.
T'Challa. Mm-hmm. You know,
there
could be many Black Panthers, but there's only one T'Challa, and that's the thing. Like my thing is that Chadwick Boseman, is T'Challa. And T'Challa is Black Panther, you know, but he is the character of T'Challa. The character of T'Challa, his how he carried himself in the film is what he's being remembered as. So if you recast the character of T'Challa, then that person needs to be as good as Boseman, if not better. He needs to be able to convey that dignity. He needs to be able to carry himself the way that Boseman carried himself. You know, but that's not going to happen.
So what do we do? Do we game of death this? Do we just use all the footage and what's going on?
Well, let me put this out there. Like, I'm really torn on what you want to do about recasting this role because, like everyone else, I was looking forward to seeing T'Challa, like, again, take on Namor and do all of these incredible things that he does in the comics. That's one of his most iconic recent storylines. But there is only one person that I would, off the top of my head, and this is because I mentioned it earlier and I also finished it recently. There's only one person that could do it.
Who?
Off the top of my head, but he can't because he has other obligations. I'm talking about Yahya. I don't know how to pronounce his name. You're gonna have to excuse me with this one again. But Yahya Abdul Mateen II, who was in Aquaman, Black Manta.
Oh
yeah,
and he was.
I like him, but I don't.
He was in Watchmen. You have to see Watchmen.
Yeah,
finish Watchmen.
I understand. But my thing is that
I'm just saying in terms of capability. I'm not saying necessarily in terms of should we, because it's really hard to say. Again,
do you recast? Let me put it to you this way: do you recast Robert Downey Jr.?
No,
that's all I'm going to say.
You don't. You create a new Iron Man.
You can say yes to that. If you can say yes to that, then we can talk. If you can't say definitively that you're going to recast Iron Man with a different person than Robert Downey Jr., then that's the end of this conversation.
It's a little different though, because he didn't pass away. The character passed away. The actor didn't pass away. So that brings up a whole other set of conflicts, because you have to talk about.
Danny's got his hand raised. I think he wants to say something.
If you
Go
I feel
ahead.
like if you like,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I feel like if you like recast him, it's like a dishonor to the piece of his legacy that was Black Panther. Nobody else can do it as good as him. By trying to recast it, it's almost as if you're doing a disservice to it because you're not remembering. You're not really remembering Black Panther for the character. I mean, for the actor, you're just trying to replace him, and that seems a little bit like that's
here's how I would do it. I would not necessarily to recast, right? Like, even though I had like my crazy theory of like bringing Killmonger back, and all of a sudden he has like the Vegeta redemption arc where he goes from being the ultimate villain to being the good. What? Hold on. Anyway, I said that like that's what it's a crazy thing, but the right way I think that could have been done, that could be done is again use a deep fake, have the movie, the second movie, start with the fact that T'Challa has an illness that even the science of Wakanda can't heal, and he accepts his fate and then passes on the power of, Black Panther onto the next person. So this way, you kind of also make it real. You make the fact that like, Boseman's struggle that he's been dealing with has been, maybe even like do that. Maybe even be like, hey, like he actually has been going through this illness through the timeline of the entire Infinity Saga and the whole nine. And all of a sudden, he's like, I've been using the Black Panther power to keep me alive, but I can't do it no longer. And then he passes it on. I think that would be a really good way to honor the sacrifice, the internal struggle that he shouldered on his own without telling anyone, and then pass it off to a new Black Panther. What do you guys think of that?
I hope they can just pull that off. It's just thinking about everything that could have been. It's one of those, like, it's all these things that could have been. And that's what makes like, all right, well, now all of a sudden, now that it won't be, and
right.
I mean, that's what makes all, I mean, yeah, it's just really sad and depressing to think about, but
I mean, so what
but
about
I'm with it. Yeah, no, I'm with it. Like I think that's a good idea. Like I'm not with the recasting. Like there's only one T'Challa, and that's it. Leave it at that. And but you got to keep Black Panther going one way or the other.
Well, yeah, clearly.
Well, it's going to probably be Letitia Wright is going to have to take up the mantle sooner.
I'll put my hand down now.
I would imagine. I like the idea. I had basically a similar one, which is somehow, T'Challa can maybe sacrifice himself. Again, a lot of indication is that Namor was going to be in the second film. He was going to be like the anti-hero and the villain possibly. So you could have, T'Challa sacrifice himself to save Shuri and everyone somehow. That's how you can create a conflict with Namor. Maybe he like tries to sink Wakanda like he's done in the comics. I mean, but it's
the reason I don't like that idea is because like it intertwines it into the plot of the story itself. Whereas I think if like you do it early on in a way that doesn't directly impact the plot of the story for the rest of the film, I don't want to say it this way, but you kind of get it out of the way and help people move on through the rest of the film.
Yeah, there's not much setup you can do between, like, which would have been kind of a big point. You can't do a conflict. You can't set up the conflict between T'Challa and Namor, so it would seem really defanged.
I think like the best way would be to like, do it that way, where he's, in the beginning of part 2, he, discloses the fact that he has this illness and he can no longer fight. That he's lost the battle.
But I think you already have the villain of the film already there in the franchise, because and I think we discussed this briefly on our text last night. You have M'Baku there.
Yeah,
he is man-ape, which is a derogatory term that they did not put in the film for obvious reasons, right? Mm-hmm. But you already have the conflict built in there, because what does T'Challa do at the very end of the film? He says, we're going to reveal ourselves to the world. We're going to offer the technology to help. And what is the thing that keeps the Jabari away from the rest of Wakanda is the fact that they don't follow traditions anymore. That, you have, and now you literally have T'Challa just going against every single thing that Wakanda has stood for how many centuries. You have your villain right there.
Yeah, but I don't think that it works only because the Jabari had the redemption arc in the first one, right? Because the first one started with that I am your enemy, and then it ended with I am your savior. To then now go back to like I'm your enemy again. I don't know. I think that you can still use them for conflict, but I don't think that you can make them the villain.
Well, you can't do it.
I think it's more the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Well, I don't think you can do it, and here's why: because in Endgame, the M'Baku and the Jabari are there. There's no conflict after all that time.
Yeah.
They're there. They're helping out. See, like he gets them to help out right away. So the conflict, I think that's like a Black Panther 3 thing to do. But go ahead.
No, but here's my rebuttal to all that. First of all, the reason really that M'Baku helps T'Challa is because you have Killmonger on the throne, and that
no. Endgame. When they fight Thanos.
I'm getting to that.
Okay,
I'm getting to that because I'm going to Gabe's point. Now I'm coming around to yours. Okay. Because the reason that the Jabari are there is obviously you've got a guy that's going to kill the universe. I think it's in their best interest to try and stop him.
Sure, but
just saying.
I mean, not even that. Infinity War, they looked pretty chummy too.
I mean, don't forget, don't forget that that M'Baku also saved T'Challa, even though it was an eye for an eye kind of thing. He still didn't have to save him. And he did, not knowing what was going on down there, So he still did it. Like I think that like he still had his redemption arc. And I'm not saying that you can't make him the villain and stuff like that. I just don't think that it would play as well.
Or like maybe not again for me, not this soon, because you can set something up in terms of like maybe by the end of the second movie, which again I really want to see Namor. I'm freaking waiting for Namor.
Why not have Namor?
And obviously, that's going to be different.
Why not have Namor?
Andy, why are you so loud?
Oh, my bad.
Namor be.
Well, no. Why not have him?
Namor do what?
Take out T'Challa, and then that's how the.
Well, no, that's what I was. That's what I was thinking, but again, like you wouldn't be able to really set up a conflict with them because there's no footage, So unless you did a bunch of deep fakes, which we all kind of don't really want that, right? So we don't want that, and then it's going to be a weird conflict. It's not going to be as strong as it could have been. But what I think you can kind of do, and I'll stop kind of like fan kind of trying to predict this, but if you have Namor as a central character and maybe one of the villains in the second one, you can have the conflict between M'Baku and I guess Shuri at this point stem from Namor just destroying a whole bunch of Wakanda and M'Baku blaming him for it. Maybe like a whole bunch of Jabari die in the conflict. That's how you can create maybe M'Baku as a villain in the third one, in my opinion.
Maybe. It's just my thing is that like the other thing too is that like I don't think that M'Baku as a villain, at least not a main villain, I don't think it plays as big because obviously it plays well in a comic book because it's a bi-weekly series or monthly series and stuff like that, and you got to tell stories. But when it comes to film, there needs to be like a really big gravity, to it, like the danger of that person being the villain. And I don't know if they can like create big enough conflict with M'Baku just because M'Baku wants to be the king.
Maybe he could be one of the villains.
Yeah, I think he could be like one of the villains and stuff like that. But I also don't think that I don't necessarily want to see M'Baku as the villain. I think that like he can continue being the outsider that you don't know if he's gonna help or not. But I don't necessarily want to see him as the villain. But yeah, the other thing too, to your point, Danny, is that if you do intertwine him, like Namor is the reason that T'Challa is dead, then again, that's now the entire plot of the entire movie. And so you're dragging that on and not helping the audience move forward.
Here's what I think. I don't know, and this is going to sound a lot like a rerun, but just hear me out on this. Have any of you seen the Ultimate Avengers movie #2?
No,
I don't think so.
Nope.
It's talking about the animated,
right?
The animated movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there is a villain there who's named Kleiser. He's a Chitauri spy, and basically his whole arc in the second movie is retrieving the huge meteorite of vibranium under Wakanda. Now, here's what I was thinking.
Okay.
What if when Thanos died, there has been all sorts of dissent inside of his, presumably he has this huge empire that he, rules because, he has to get all the resources and all that.
Thanos, right?
So what if the Chitauri is one of those factions and you have Kleiser in that role as the villain? And he's like, well, hey, there's a huge bunch of vibranium under the earth. Why don't we just grab it and make ourselves stronger?
That could tie it to.
Died in Endgame.
They could tie it to other Avengers movies. Yeah.
But that was on Earth. Was that every single bit of Thanos' forces?
It might be, yeah. We don't know, actually.
No, I
but
think it should be because it's
you
not
figure
like,
Tony Stark, he snapped
he did a
to
snap,
kill.
and he didn't think about I only want to
forces.
kill the ones that are right here, right now.
Yeah, he was just like, I
or
need
just the ones I can see.
Yeah,
or maybe maybe he did everything that at this battle right here. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure there's a way they can bring it back somehow. They'll find.
It's comic books; they can always bring it away.
Yeah, exactly.
They can always find a way. So,
well, look at some of his other villains though, because this is kind of how you can figure out how you would be able to plot something out. I mean, so Man-Ape, obviously M'Baku is his villain. Let's just call him M'Baku for the rest of this podcast because we hate that name. Killmonger, who's dead. Ulysses Claw isn't necessarily a Black Panther villain, but he's dead. Okay, and he would have been awesome. I wish they didn't kill him. That's the one thing I didn't like about the movie. Even though I understand why they did it, I wanted to see more of him. But anyway, Namor, right? That's another one of his big villains. And then after that, you have, well, this is not a drop-off in quality, but after that, you have kind of a drop-off. You have Kraven the Hunter.
Kraven is
who would be awesome. Kraven is somebody that was being considered. I know you guys have heard that rumor. Ryan Coogler was considering having Kraven the Hunter, which would be awesome. I would agree with
Kraven
that.
Is so
but
dope.
After that, it's like Batroc the Leaper, who has been in the MCU. He's been in the MCU already.
GSP.
Captain America fought him right at the beginning of
Captain America 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Of the Winter Soldier. So he's alive, but does anybody really want to see Black Panther fight that dude?
Yeah, but the thing is, look, you do Namor in the second one, and you do Kraven in the third one, and that's good to me. Those are two super solid villains. I mean, Kraven,
does Marvel have Kraven though? Does Marvel have Kraven though?
Now,
Sony,
he might belong to Sony.
I think they did that was part of the deal that they could use the Marvel villains as well.
So let's go
I think that was part of the Spider-Man deal. Or Spider-Man villains. We would have to find that out.
Because he's technically part of the Spider-Man universe, and who knows if they're still doing their Sinister Six stuff. So
they are.
Last I heard,
they are. And Kraven, if I'm not mistaken, Kraven is supposed to be in it. Like they teased it.
I don't know if that's been confirmed or not, but
he
should be.
But there's been some hinted teasers.
Okay. I mean, Kraven would be an awesome villain. So we would have to confirm, I guess, whether or not the MCU has the rights to use him. But maybe Sony should do him a freaking solid.
Kraven had an awesome arc in recent Amazing Spider-Man new volume launch. So
he's always had great arcs against Spider-Man, dude. Like it would be a great way to tie Spider-Man and Black Panther together also. So we would have to see if that would work or not. I don't know. Any other thoughts on moving forward with that?
No, I don't. I mean, again, even if they could also just do two. They don't need to do a third one. They could do just Namor and then, set up the new Black Panther, not the new T'Challa, just the new Black Panther, and then use Black Panther in the MCU tie-in movies as opposed to more individual films. I don't know.
It's kind of impossible to
Well, because you don't have to have a bunch of solo Black Panther films to tie into the rest of the MCU, like Secret Wars and stuff. You could just like introduce the new Black Panther in part 2, and then just have him show up, semi-prominently in the other tie-in films.
Well, if it is a new male Black Panther and it doesn't end up being Shuri, I mean, I don't even know if they were planning on doing that. But again, we know that that's part of what it was in the comics.
Shuri actually would be pretty good though, because in the comics, T'Challa is like super, super intelligent. Shuri is, and one of the things that's
she's smarter than him, right?
The interaction between and the interaction between Black Panther and Reed Richards, because they're always fighting as to who's smarter. Shuri would actually play that really, really well.
Oh, like playing off of Jim from The Office. We all know will probably end up being cast as Mr. Fantastic.
That would, him and his wife right there. You got them both.
Yeah. Well, that's been long rumored, or at least long fan casted. I almost feel like there literally couldn't be another, Reed and Sue Richards. So I don't know.
All right. So let's, I guess, try to give our final thoughts. I think
final tribute and send off
on everything that has occurred, on, again, the reason for the podcast. And, we geeked it out a little bit and tried to figure out the future of the MCU. But let's go back to what we came here for, right? It's just to honor Chadwick Boseman. I guess I'll start with some sort of tribute or memoriam. So like most people, I was introduced to Chadwick Boseman in 2016's Captain America: Civil War. Not all people, because Danny, like you said, you were introduced in some of his other great films, like 42. And he had been in some other great films, I think, already by then. I think Get On Up had came before Black Panther or even Civil War. And Marshall was another great film where he played, of course, the iconic black, black person in history, Thurgood Marshall. So again, I guess, I don't want to get too crazy and too wordy with all this. I think it's just, as we all would agree, it's kind of a cliche to say at this point, like, it's really just very sad to see, not just a young man, but a young man who, as we all noted, was really, really strongly involved in bringing a new era of representation to Hollywood that was long, long overdue. And again, nobody is saying that he was the first to do this, not the first filmmaker, not the first actor, to be sure. But there's a reason why this young man who, wanted to do completely other things, wanted to be a director, was a teacher, was an athlete. There's a reason why somebody like a Felicia Rashad or a Denzel Washington would say, like, there's something special about this young man. Like, and that was, I think, he was about 23 years old when Denzel Washington decided to help pay for his education to be an actor. And, Denzel Washington is one of the most iconic black actors in modern history, if not in all of history of Hollywood and of film. So that, again, to me, that kind of gives you an idea of how special people knew he was going to be a long time ago. And that really reflected on what you see, again, on social media, to the people that knew him the best, people like Josh Gad, for instance, who, as I noted, on his Instagram, he was absolutely broken up in tears. And I think, Wolfie, you mentioned it earlier, the last text message that Chadwick Boseman sent to Josh Gad was something that was just really encapsulating who he was as a person. Like, in spite of all the hardships that he was going through, he just wanted to help people, make people happy, make people look in the mirror and see themselves as heroes. That's something that he noted a lot. That's something that he came back to as a theme. He wanted to be Black Panther so that other people could look in the mirror and be proud of who they were. And I think that's really the thing that encapsulates what a special person Chadwick Boseman is. So, I mean, yeah, that's kind of sadly, what I think he meant to me, what I observed and what he meant to other people, which was really important to his legacy. A talented young man, and just sad that we're not going to see more of him and see more of his beautiful positive influence on the world and on film and on properties and characters that we love.
Well said.
Thank you. You want to go ahead and say something?
So, so for me, there's been very few moments, very few people in my life where I feel like I've been impacted enough to change how I act and operate in daily life. And through the revelation of the silent struggle that Chadwick Boseman shouldered while giving us examples of humility and leadership and dignity, everything that he did while understanding the possibility of his fate and, making sure that no one else suffered with him. I now feel, inspired to carry myself in a similar manner, making sure that it's not about me and my struggles. Of course, whenever one needs help, you should look for help. You should, if you have a cry for help, whatever. But for me, like the way that he clearly did everything, with the intention of inspiring the next generation of people and, inspiring anybody that he came in contact with. When he stepped into a room, the way that he carried himself, everyone just knew, that this was a man of dignity and caring and love. And, for me, I'm looking to carry myself in a similar manner. I want to kind of be better every single day as it is. And I now have like the clearest example of that. And I hope to follow his lead forever. So.
Thanks, man. Guys, what other thoughts do we have?
I could go next, I guess.
Go ahead, man.
So yeah, I guess same thing in terms of impact. Like there's something about someone who's going through all these things that's still able to do so much positive in the world. And I think especially when someone's struggling or going through something as personal as cancer, I feel like a lot of the times people reach out when they have cancer and there's a big support system, but I mean, he didn't. And that's saying something to me. Like he wasn't looking for this. He wasn't looking for that. He wanted to do it on his own. He didn't want anyone to feel bad for him. And that's not to say that that's the reason people do it, but like he really was just, he shouldered it and he still worked through all of it. And, it puts things into perspective for everyone, and including myself included, that, it could always be worse. And there's no reason to not push forward no matter what you're going through, because someone's always got it worse and someone's still pushing through it. So perseverance and strength is just not even all the words you could use for what he did. And look how many people he inspired. And, and again, just to piggyback off what everyone else said, like it's disappointing and it's a shame that we're not going to be able to see more of all that potential that he showed us. And, I mean, I guess the only thing we can do is consider ourselves lucky that we did get what he was able to give us, and, be better as people as our way to honor him and what he stood for as well. And Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever. Thank you, Danny. Crew?
Well, yeah.
Go ahead, AJ.
I'm mostly going to echo what most of you guys have said. This guy was, put simply, an icon, ushering in, I guess, a new era of representation. And, and I just watched 40. I haven't been able to see like a lot of his works, but I just saw parts of 42. And yeah, like I can really like all the emotion he puts into his work. It really shows, and it's very disheartening to hear that he's gone. But at the same time, he made the best of what he had. And I'd go so far as to say he left the world a better place for it. So yeah, it's a shame.
Thank you, AJ.
Okay, so
thank you, New York Sirens.
Yeah, that's me, guys. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Eli.
Positivity and kindness is basically what his legacy is built off of.
Mm-hmm.
He was a natural born leader who had an effect on literally every generation. Well, our generation and the generation before us, before my generation, and generations to come. Yeah. I would generally describe him as a superhero. I don't know too much about the person. Well, I do because of the movies and how he didn't really act. He didn't act any of it out.
Yeah,
just
I know what you mean.
Being himself.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely a superhero who, I guess, well, really helped out and brought like happiness to like people all over the world, really. And there's not much to say about him except that he was a really kind person. That's generally it. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Eli. Walt,
I guess I'm up, right?
Yeah. Please give us your thoughts.
All right. Well, it sucks to be last because everything you guys said is basically, what I feel. This he was a once in a lifetime talent that cancer took him from us way too early and cut short whatever lasting impact that he could have potentially even had more than what he has now. So I'm gonna say this really quickly. Fuck cancer.
Mm-hmm. Fuck cancer. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, that's how it works. So pardon my French or my Greek or whatever the heck you want to call it, but
we'll allow it.
That's how I feel about that.
We allow it today for sure.
But you know what? Even in death, he continues to inspire and to help people, because now a lot more people are aware of colon cancer and its dangers and how it impacts the Black community even more so than normal populations. And so now, because of his passing, a lot more people are alerted to the fact that colon cancer is a deadly disease. Yeah. And, a lot of people are now thinking about going to the doctor and checking themselves out.
Very much in the minority community.
Even in death, he continues to inspire,
Mm-hmm.
He could have gone down as a once in a lifetime generational talent. He would have been, and again, not to keep it very narrow, but again, with what he's done so far, he's impacted so much. I just look at what could have been if he was still around and how much more of an impact he could have had on society itself. But I'm going to wrap it up with just a couple of comments that Ryan Coogler had, because I think it's important to hear what he has to say. He said that it hurts more to know that we can't have another conversation, another FaceTime, or another text message exchange. He would check in on me and my loved ones, even as he dealt with the scourge of cancer. Chad's performance made it all real. I think it was because from the time that I met him, the ancestors spoke through him. It's no secret to me how he was able to skillfully portray some of our most notable ones. I had no doubt that he would live on and continue to bless us with more, but it is with a heavy heart and a sense of deep gratitude to have ever been in his presence that I have to reckon with the fact that Chad is an ancestor now. And I know that he will watch over us until we meet again. I can't say it any better than the way he put it, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Walt. So let's try to leave it off on the most positive notes that we can. I'll just name something that always brings a smile on my face, and it's not a movie that he was in, but I always remember when he was on Black Jeopardy on Saturday Night Live. That's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So that's a moment that brings me so much joy.
Oh, God.
You guys know the sketch that I'm talking about. For anybody who hasn't seen it.
Okay.
Was it the casserole?
Yeah.
We should actually repost that. We should put that on and let's remember the good.
Yeah, that's a moment that really, 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 really loved. And again, the movies were fantastic. I love everything about him as Black Panther, everything about him as Jackie Robinson, and all the other films that we had seen him in. He was great in The Five Bloods. What about you guys? Is there any quick moment you want to name that's like a favorite Chadwick Boseman moment, geek or otherwise? Could be a real life moment. It doesn't have to be a fictional moment either.
I gotta say, one of the best moments for me was from the Black Panther movie, in the scene where he had just been crowned king. He just did the coronation, the fight with M'Baku, and he is back in the base with Shuri, and that's the first time that we see him give her a pound and then the Wakanda symbol, and they're talking, and she goes more importantly, what are those? And points at his sandals. That moment was just, I felt like that could have even been, I don't know if that was an unscripted moment or whatever it was, but it just felt like such a real, a local kind of a now moment. And you're looking at a king and a princess, but then you're seeing the relationship between brother and sister, and it just felt like that was brother and sister real life off screen. So
it was such a
love
great
that
scene.
moment. That's one of my favorite scenes in the entire film.
Yeah. Guys, any other thoughts or anything else you want to share?
I never freeze.
I want to say that.
You froze.
Oh man! Oh, I'm gonna
That's
miss
a great
this guy.
moment in the movie.
It's so hard to pick one moment.
I know.
Jeez. Someone else go first.
Well, we got the kids and Walt, so
we got some good ones. If you guys don't want to share a moment, that's fine also. But is there anything else that you guys you think of when you think about what a great guy and what a great actor Chadwick Boseman was?
I mentioned it earlier for sure, but that one scene in 42, that stuck with me. It still sticks with me. Just that the amount of
happy moments.
Powerful.
I mean, I just showed his. It showed me that's the moment I thought when they're oh, we casted this person as Black Panther, and I was I thought back and I was oh, he's a great actor.
Yeah.
This is perfect.
It's a revelatory moment.
Yeah, I'm okay with this. What a great actor they casted. That was it.
So, okay, that's an awesome moment as well. Eli, AJ, Walt, any other thoughts on, Eli and AJ, any other moments that you wanted to name, or should we move on now to the end of our tribute?
Yeah, I think you guys got the best of.
Yes.
All right. So again, I want to thank everyone on the podcast crew. I want to thank Danny for joining us this week.
Thank you guys for having
giving us some great insight. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. We'd love to have you again. I wouldn't have an issue with it
I'm always down,
at all because you're freaking awesome, dude.
I'm always down, bro.
Daddy.
And remember, guys, that Wolfie and Danny got their own podcast, The Grappling Review. Quick little plug for the crew over there. You should definitely check it out. It's about all things combat sport related.
I'm in about 4 more episodes, and then I'm gonna get voted off. So
then we're gonna
check them out now.
We're gonna do like a public vote to see if I should just kill them off.
We're gonna Jason Todd. We're literally gonna Jason Todd me. It's gonna be good.
Wait, you're gonna vote him off of Fight Island, guys? That's messed up.
We're gonna kill him off of the podcast show and possibly get a new co-host because sometimes he sucks.
There is an artist renditioning coming of that famous panel of Batman holding Jason Todd. It's coming. Don't worry.
Oh my god,
we're gonna recreate that.
We did actually. You're heavy.
Oh boy. Thanks to the Grappling Review crew and obviously to our boy Wolfie as always for introducing us to a new crew member. As usual, thanks for dealing with any sound issues, guys. All of our fans out there, our legions and legions of fans, thank you for joining us and dealing with any sound issues today. As usual, you know what to do. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying our content. Like, rate, share, and subscribe even if you're not enjoying our content. Like, what does it hurt to do that? Check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and iTunes, wherever your favorite podcasts are sold. And one last thought. We had a moment of reflection from Ryan Coogler. I really liked Angela Bassett's way of putting it. So if I may, I'll leave us with that. So Angela Bassett, this young man's dedication was awe-inspiring, his smile contagious, his talent unreal. So I pay tribute to a beautiful spirit, a consummate artist, a soulful brother. Thou art not dead, but flown afar. All you possessed, Chadwick, you freely gave. Rest now, sweet prince, Wakanda forever. And to all of our fans out there, please stay safe, take care of yourself, get yourself checked out, make sure you're healthy, and as always, please stay geeky, my friends.
Rest in power, dude.